Thank you, Bob Deen from the Clingendael Institute. General, you're being asked quite a lot go. Thank you for interacting
with us. Somebody else is quite all right.
Much appreciated. Now, I have a question as a military man, because the ceasefire is going to be incredibly difficult. We know from the previous ceasefires, the Minsk agreements, I used to work for the OSCE, that was violated almost every single day for a period of 8 years. And this line of contact is much longer. And as a military man, you know well the complexity of these weapon systems, artillery, drones. Do you have some idea already on what will be needed even to monitor and enforce such a ceasefire? And what happens if it's violated?
And I would just
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I would like to also add to that. You know, you have, first of all, what security guarantees is the United States willing to provide to Ukraine? And there's a bit of a dilemma here, because you have on the one hand Zelensky saying that if you're not willing to provide security guarantees and the EU can't fill the gap, then he wants an army of 1.5 million. They have about, I think, 800,000 right now. And Putin, that's an absolute no-go for him. How are you going to handle that in any sort of negotiation to get them the guarantees that they need to secure some sort of lasting peace?
Well, one of them is, I kind of alluded to it, and I'll go back to it. But the first is, to be very candid with you, I do not speak for the President of the United States. The President of the United States speaks for himself. Okay? And I will not say that this is a decision of the United States. I got 0 electoral college votes this year. Okay? I got no votes. Right? He did. He's the president. His commander-in-chief under our Constitution, he makes those calls. He'll make those calls. We as advisors make recommendations. And so when I say this is what they'll be, I don't know what they'll be, because that's his call, not my call. When it comes to violations, that's what I made to earlier, is this is when I say you have to take a measure. And historically, if you do it, you're good. How do you respond to a violation or a ceasefire? We have proven that. Donald Trump has proven that. That's where he made that comment about it's using SEAL Team 6 for one American farmer that was captured and taken prisoner in Niger, and we sent an entire Special Operations SEAL team from Dam Neck, Virginia, all the way into Africa and respond. That's why we responded on a nerve gas attack against Assad by putting 71 Tomahawk land attack missiles in there. The response is immediate, it's violent, it's overwhelming. That's how you respond to ceasefires. You don't respond to ceasefires by going, gee, that's okay. Okay? And the measure of the man, and I've seen it happen in 4 years, is a willingness, the willingness to use force, because that's a key part of deterrence. Because what you're asking about is, on a violation of a ceasefire, is how do you establish deterrence? You can have all the capability in the world that you want, but if you don't have the will to do that, and the will to execute, then it means absolutely nothing. And ceasefires mean nothing.
Okay. We're going to take another question. Yeah.
I just want to make this point on behalf of Ukraine. We have a shared responsibility, because it was us as allies that encouraged Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons. And I know that there is a discussion in Ukraine that had they not done that, they would not be in this situation. The truth is, when you look around the world in different conflict zones, there are different security guarantees. The United States effectively has security guarantees with Japan, with South Korea. There's Article 5 with Israel. There are different security arrangements. This is a long border. There is drone capability, which we learn from, that can provide some of that guarantee. But in the end, what I think we'll be thinking about, and I know we're thinking about, is what does Russia fear? What stops them breaching the guarantee? And that is the detail. That is an alliance we're getting into. And of course, Ukraine will want that guarantee. And even if they were to be admitted to NATO, there is a path. They would need those guarantees even before that irreversible pathway that we set out back in September.
Okay. I'd just like to explain, because we're also streaming this on YouTube Live, why the General is getting so many questions from the audience. Here at the Munich Security Conference, we've heard a lot from the Americans, but this has actually been the only conversation that a member of the current administration is engaging in, both in a panel setting and also taking questions from the audience. So that's why this conversation has been dominated in that way. There's one more question here, and then this is the final question.
Thank you very much. Pavel Popescu from Romania. General Kellogg. I remember, definitely, yeah. I remember the meeting we had 3 years ago when we were discussing about these topics. First Trump administration, President Trump said lots of things which Europe didn't like. Lots. He said lots of things that Europe didn't like in the first administration. And he was right. We like it or not, he was right a lot about a lot of things we had to do right. We have to acknowledge that. Second Trump administration, we leave it now. We see the same style, we see the same type of requests, but we see something that we've seen these days here. It's an elephant in the room. We see parallel with the same requests like in the first Trump administration, some direct and non-direct signs in supporting right extreme parties in Europe, which, by the way, are voting in our parliaments against the defense spending. In my country, the presidential candidate, and I was the head of the National Security and Defense Committee, voting for the $6.5 billion spend of F-35s to defend my country first, and because of our strategic partnership. In my country, a candidate spoke against that contract, addressing people that this is a very bad thing to spend money on F-35s for our defense. My question is, how will you deal with this kind of narrative while you will try to convince Europe? And I agree, we should be convinced we should do more about that. And I'm a big fan of that. But how will you address this challenge while supporting the voices which got the vote because they don't want to spend money on defense?
Well,
Thank you very much.
I think I think when you talk about issues like that, that's your issue, not our issue. It's just sort of like what was happened today and I'll give you an example. It's a parallel issue. When I was asked about Ukrainian elections today, I said, that's the issue for the Ukrainian people. The same issue, that's the reason why, as a democracy, you get a chance to vote about it. And it's one of those things where I think there's a cautionary note that one of our founders of our Constitution, Benjamin Franklin, was asked a question when he came out of our Constitutional Convention. He said, Mr. Franklin, what have you given it? What have you given us? And his response was, a republic, if you can keep it. So I think this is one of those, that's a question that you need to ask yourselves internally to every one of your nations. That's not a question you should ask the United States. Everybody's can chip in on the side. They do. We will. You will. But this is one that I think you have to answer yourself, not to me. I didn't.
Okay. Minister Sevilla, I would like to ask you to have the final word, to bring it all together for us. What are the next steps for Ukraine? This morning when we heard from Zelensky, he said that he was essentially available for a meeting with Trump. He was asking for it emphatically. What comes next in the next days and months for you?
So first, I would like to confirm that David has a right to speak on behalf of Ukraine, definitely. And you deserve this right. So once again, unity and strength. We do really have a chance to end this war this year by demonstrating strength, by implementing concept which was also announced by President Trump, peace through strength. We have clear understanding how we could proceed with this. We need support of the United States. We need to coordinate our efforts. And probably to predict, to prevent such a situation when we were not aware about something about us. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. We will never accept any initiative which was elaborated without us. We could not expect easy scenarios.
How would your non-acceptance look?
We know how to resist. You see, we prove this at the battlefield also. So we do really believe that we could get new dynamics in our peace efforts. And we are ready for this.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for Peace Through Strength, the plan for Ukraine. This has been a conflict zone from the Munich Security Conference. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, Foreign Minister.
My pleasure.
Yeah, really a pleasure to speak with you. And I look forward to